Good morning, this is Angela with Parkrose Permaculture. It is early in the morning here, the third week of June, Portland, Oregon. I am standing in the annual veggie patch of my permaculture garden here. It's too early to let the chickens out, but they can hear that I'm out here, so there may be some intermittent grumbling from them as they are starting to agitate for their breakfast. When I'm done with this video, I promise I will let them out and feed them, and they'll be very, very happy, but it's a little early yet. I do live in an area where there are raccoons, and that is the only source of predator pressure for my chickens that I have, and ducks that I have experienced. I have not lost a chicken or a duck to a raccoon in probably 9 years, and that's because I'm really careful to lock them up before dusk and let them out late enough in the morning. Here in my area, if you let your chickens out too early in the morning, they're very susceptible to death via raccoon. So I'm standing in the annual veggie patch of my permaculture food forest garden in Portland, Oregon, and this is a sun trap, which is an area where you don't have a lot of shrubs or trees shading the incoming sun. It comes in from behind the camera toward me. And so it's an ideal design for growing annual veggies, which love sunshine. So I figured, I'm showing you around the garden every week of June and July because the change, the maturation, the succession in the garden is so rapid. I can't do a once a month video. I've got to come every week and show you. See if my neighbor's dog stops barking here. This week in the garden, what has changed since last week, and some of my normal tasks that I undertake this time of year in a permaculture garden. Now, I do want to encourage all of you, as you're looking at what I've got going on here, the orchard that rings the property and the annual veggies, excuse me, it's early in the morning, and all of the abundant cottage garden flowers and flower borders and the rain garden. Keep in mind that this is the 13th year of this project, and I have been doing permaculture for more than 20 years. So if you're just starting out on your journey and your garden looks very different than mine, and maybe the amount of living green things and flowering things and the amount of habitat that's created seems overwhelming, it's been a slow process and it hasn't always looked like this. So I know when people used to come before the pandemic and do garden tours and workshops here, some folks would get discouraged, like I couldn't possibly do this in my yard. You totally can if that's what you want. You just have to be patient and slow. Mother Nature doesn't work super fast, and we have to make permaculture work within the context of our real lives, real jobs. Most of us cannot do permaculture full time. We have kids and parents to care for. We have work obligations outside the house, particularly if you are in the United States and your health insurance is tied to your employer. And we have maybe hobbies. I know I did a lot of sports for about 7 years. That took me away from my garden and made my changes slower here. We might have volunteering in the community, things like that. So don't worry if your garden doesn't look like this. And also keep in mind that June and July are kind of the peak lushness in Portland, Oregon. So you're seeing things when they're really heavily leafed out, heavily in blossom and starting to produce. A lot of my annual veggies that are actually truly biennials and are in their second summer are going to seed. And we have to make the decision, do we want to let them go to seed and save the seeds, or do we want to cut them back? I actually grow my radishes specifically for hummingbird and butterfly and bee forage. So the radishes I wanted to eat, already gone. But I do grow my Swiss chard. I don't buy seeds, I let it self-sow. Please check out my video on Swiss chard because I go into that in a lot more detail. But this is the time of year that I have this big seed head, and if I wanted to, I would just let it go ahead and start turning brown and mature on the plant, and then broadcast the seeds everywhere. You can see it's quite tall. It's actually kind of obscuring the tomato behind it in that cage. So just be aware when you have your Swiss chard bolting, it might shade other veggies. That is a bonus for a lot of veggies. It gets really sunny and quite dry here in late June and through July. And the tall spires of bolting Swiss chard, as they mature, can do what's called stack functions. They can serve more than one purpose. They can produce vegetables, and they can mature their seeds so that you never have to buy Swiss chard again. But they also can provide some shade, particularly in the afternoon, for veggies that might be sensitive to sunburn. So if you want to keep your peas going a little bit longer, consider growing Swiss chard in front of them. So when the sun comes in this way in the garden, it is shading plants behind it that maybe are a little sensitive to the afternoon sun. So when you're thinking about where you're planting things in your garden, always think that in permaculture we strive to get as many benefits, as many yields, and as many jobs out of each element in our garden as we can. Hardly anything has to just do one job. So Swiss chard's great for that. Great for shade, great for food, great for saving pennies because you never have to buy seed more than once. Boy, Violet really wants her breakfast. I'll be there in a second, Violet. There are other things in the garden in late June that have finished flowering, and I don't actually need any seed from them right now. So let me go show you some of those. All right, here is a great example. This is columbine. Now, columbine is a great perennial flowering plant. The flowers are actually edible. And it finishes flowering the middle of June here in Portland, and it sets these seed pods. Now you might think, I want this all over my garden. It's beautiful. It comes up. If you buy columbine in the plant nursery and then you let it self-sow, it will start to naturalize, and it will also be able to express its genetic diversity more fully. So you may buy a purple one. If you let it self-sow in your garden and crossbreed as it will and produce its own offspring, what you find is you get a huge array of colors. I get from dark purple to bluey purple to burgundy to pink to pure white. And I love that. And I actually don't plant any columbine. I started out with one set of seeds I was given given by a friend, and I let them just do their own thing. So these are the seed pods. And this time of year, you might think, I'm gonna let these go to seed because I want these everywhere. And that's well and good, but actually now is not the time. What you wanna do is come in here. Let's see if I can get my camera to cooperate. So what you wanna do is you wanna come in here and cut it off all the way at the base. Cut all of this off. And then I just throw it back on the bed. So in cutting off all of the stalk, including the immature seed heads, I am going to promote a second round of flowering in the garden. So you don't actually have to save these seed heads. These are immature. They may dry and they may produce seed. They may not. I'm just going to throw them on the bed as chop and drop mulch. But what I'm doing now is I am promoting this plant flowering again. And then it will set seed in August, and those are the seeds that you save. So you can get 2 rounds of flowering out of many of your perennials using this method. You don't have to save the first round of seeds. Whack it back to right above the ground, to the rosette, to the base, and you'll get another round of flowering. So because it's right next to where I'm standing and I cannot help but notice it. The comfrey tea that I made a video on recently, right down here, has gotten real funky. You can't walk through the side of the garden without smelling it. I have in the past likened it to the bog of eternal stench from Labyrinth. It's real funky. It's about ready to use as a foliar spray on my plants. I was waiting for a period where rain was not in the forecast. We've had several days of rain, and now we're about to have a week of sunshine. So in the evening, I'm going to spray this on my fruit trees, and I'm going to use it diluted 9 parts water and 1 part comfrey tea, or for plants that need more nitrogen, 6 parts water, 1 part comfrey tea. I'm going to be using that to give my plants a little boost here in late June. Tomatoes particularly like a little extra boost of nitrogen at this time of year. but holy cow, it stinks. Do not get it on your shoes. Don't get it on yourself. It's really hard to get it out of your shoes. I will just say that because maybe I have spilled a bucket on myself in the past, and those shoes then become outdoor only garden shoes. So this comfrey tea is real stinky, but it's real beneficial. So I put up with a little bit of odor for the fact that I get a really great benefit. So we've had quite a bit of rain the last several days, but one of my projects I've been working on is I'm working on building a lean-to bike shed. So I'll have a little video on that when it's done. I think I'm going to do cantilevered with no front posts. I keep changing my mind, but I removed all of the horseradish in this part of the garden and put down tamped the soil and then put down a gravel bed. So that's all the farther I've gotten, but I'm hoping to finish this project this week. It should be really easy. We don't have a garage, and I'm tired of hauling bikes up and down from the basement, so I need a little bike shed. It's rainy here. I need a place to store our bikes out of the rain. Easy, simple project. My plan is to use all repurposed materials. In fact, I'm going to be heading to the rebuilding center later this week, and I'll make a video on that because it's great when we can take salvage materials for our projects. That way we produce no waste and we keep our community waste stream smaller. So also happening in the garden this time of year, the blueberries are not yet ripe. I just did a video on honeyberries and I've been picking those like crazy. But also in the last few days, the raspberries are starting to ripen. And part of my breakfast routine, morning routine in the summers is that I pick raspberries pretty much every morning, a parcel for the freezer, and then a batch for myself for breakfast. So one of the things about raspberries is that they mature so quickly. They're such an ephemeral fruit. You really have to stay on top of them. Now, I was just checking all of my raspberries, including my black caps. They are not quite ready yet, but my red raspberries are not the only ones this time of year that are ready. So let me go show you the other ones. And while I'm walking down there, when we talk about permaculture design, we really want to put things where we use them. And I've said this many times. If you check out my potting shed video, I talk quite a bit about how I want to put things in my path. If things are convenient and I don't have to expend extra effort in order to harvest them and utilize them, I'm going to be much more successful and much more likely to use them in my garden. So let me duck through here. In this part of the garden, my golden raspberries are also ready. So if you grow these and you're pretty discouraged that they're small in June, wait for the harvest in the fall. Everbearing raspberries do set 2 crops, but you also can make sure that you only get 1 crop a year, the big fall crop, by mowing the patch to the ground in November. And then the canes that are produced in the spring will set a fall crop. These canes that I'm harvesting now were ones that set really big fruit in the fall last year. So they're a little tired, but they do set a crop right now in June, and very, very sweet. If you haven't had a golden raspberry, it's very different than a red raspberry. So I'll pick these on my way down to the chicken run. Super easy walk. I'm already coming down here. Obviously, normally I would have a bucket of water in one hand and my bowl of raspberries in the other, but right now I have a camera, so I'll have to come back for the chicken's water. But this way I am sure to pick my breakfast as I stroll through the garden. So I've done a number of videos on tree collards because I'm just such a fan of them. They're so great. And I thought I would update you on what they look like, because for the last week we've been eating tree collards every single day with dinner. I chopped them and put them in tomato sauce. I had them with chicken. I had them braised with shallots and bacon, and they're just such an easy crop to grow here. And so I thought I would show you what the ones that I started look like. So here are my tree collards so far. And I don't know if you can, let me flip the camera around. So here over the fence, you can see the purple tree collards, and they're getting some predation. This is from cabbage lopers. And I found that the purple tree collards are quite susceptible to this. The cabbage lopers like them a lot. You can see here, but not enough to really damage the plant sufficiently to keep it from producing. And I'll still eat these leaves. These are still perfectly good to eat. But what I found is that the purple tree collards are not getting any slug damage or aphid damage. And on the other hand, the green tree collards, which I have some in the front yard, and the Merrick tree collards, which I know you can't really see, but they're way over there, are having a lot of trouble with aphids, which is fine. I just brushed them off. But they aren't really getting any cabbage loper damage. So that's been my experience so far. Every single tree collard that I have grown from a cutting is thriving and doing very well, having a little bit of pest pressure, but not enough to keep it from growing and producing tons of food for me. In fact, I can't wait till these are big enough and branch off to the side and I can take cuttings and start even more. Really love the flavor. Really think that these are such an easy, great crop. Love it. Here's the one my chickens mowed down, and I put a screen here, and it's come back and doing quite well. This looks a little bedraggled here because I just pulled out a bunch of these radishes for chicken treats. You can see the comfrey that I've cut back has really sprung up because we got a ton of rain, and we got then sunshine, and then more rain and more sunshine. All of the comfrey has come back to life. So I promised you, if you cut it back, it's okay. It will regenerate. I'm still cutting gummy berries every single day as treats for the chickens. Again, this gummy berry is probably 12 feet tall. Don't believe the catalogs that tell you they are 6 to 8 feet tall. I will take out those longest bits, and those will get fed to the chickens. So I'm pruning for size, and I am providing food for the chickens, and I am also releasing nitrogen to my other plants. My Jude the Obscure Rose has struggled a little bit because it's been so rainy. You can see here, such a stunning David Austin rose. So let's go up to the front yard and check out what's going on up there. Oh, on the way, the nettles that I started earlier this year, you can check out my video, Less Sting Nettles, thriving, doing great. They are kind of leaning in the path a little bit, and it is shorts season now. So I'm a tiny bit worried about that, but I think I will just cut that back and feed it to the chickens. Or maybe make stew out of it. Way up to the front yard, not quite there yet. We're back by the columbine that I just cut back. This is my motherwort, another great self-sowing annual herb. I have 3 different kinds. This is some of the best late season bee food you can get. It gets very tall. You can see our kitchen sink. We ripped out our kitchen sink. I have been looking for about 10 years for an old double apron vintage sink, and I found one in my budget, so we installed that. And the old cast iron sink is sitting outside. We're going to be using it as a wash station for eggs and produce, but I just haven't gotten around to building the frame yet. Okay, so now we're standing in the front yard, which is so sunny because I went and pollarded my purple robe locust. You can check out my video on growing it. It's a nitrogen fixing tree, and in pruning it heavily this time of year, I can use the larger branches for firewood. It makes excellent firewood, and the leaves and smaller branches will make a good nitrogen rich mulch that I can put around the garden. It is thorny, so you have to be careful where you mulch, that it's not directly in the path where you might go in flip-flops or barefoot. Now, in pollarding this, I have opened the canopy and allowed a lot more sunshine in. And that's a mixed bag because maybe I had plants that needed some shade and shelter, and now I'm giving them too much sun. So I just want to be aware of what's happening and whether I need to put shade cloth around anything that now is suddenly exposed to a lot more sunshine. Fortunately for me, a lot of my plants are now mature enough that I don't have to do that. I don't have to cover my pawpaws anymore, things like that. But I do need to cut it back this time of year because if I don't cut my purple robe locust back now, I won't get flowers next year. If I waited till fall, then there would be no flowers. I need to give it a chance to send up new branches now that will flower next spring. So this is a way that in cutting it back now, I am keeping it small because it's gonna get way too big for my yard otherwise. And in cutting it back, I get root dye back that will release nitrogen into the soil. So it creates a nice little cycle of let the sun shine in, release some plant food for my plants, and also provide a good source of mulch. Morning. Apollo! So here's a better look. Looks a little funny right now. That's okay, you can already see it's starting to put out new growth. Along all of these leaf nodes, it will start to grow. It's really difficult to kill this tree without digging the whole thing up. The pumpkins up here are getting huge. I need to cut back. Blueberries, doing very well, but not ready yet. However, there are a lot of things that are ready in this part of the garden. Not yet with the peaches. So the last thing that I wanted to share today is right up here by the street. My bush cherry has been producing for a good week. It didn't set that heavily this year. It and my other bush cherry flowered, and then we had a frost. And so I didn't get nearly as much fruit as I wanted, but we've been picking it pretty steadily. This is Romeo. The cherries are slightly smaller than a Bing cherry. I'm really looking to get my hands on a Carmine Jewel because it is supposed to also be a great bush cherry. I have room for one more. A pretty good size. I know folks often worry that bush cherries don't produce very big cherries. They are definitely smaller than a Bing, right? But they are very, very tasty. And considering the diminutive size of the shrub, they top out at 6 or 7 feet. And I can reach everything from the ground very easily. I don't care that the cherries are a little bit smaller. And I know that it's supposed to be a pie cherry. My kids and I think these are great for fresh eating. I like them much more than a Sweet Queen Anne or Bing. I find that the tartness in them makes them much more enjoyable. They're not cloyingly sweet like some of the sweet cherries on the market. They have a better flavor. I like that extra acidity in them. So I'm gonna stop here. There is a lot more happening that I could go over right now, but I just am out of time for the day, and I can't fit everything in every week. There's just too much happening. So don't be discouraged if you have a small plot. We only have a 1/4 acre here, and even so, I can't get through all of the good things that I want to share with you all every single week. So don't be discouraged if you have a small plot. You can do a ton with it, and I'll be back next week to cover more of what is happening in my permaculture garden in Portland, Oregon. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more tours of my permaculture food forest and learn more about sustainable living and holistic design, please click the subscribe button. That way you won't miss any upcoming videos. Also, I have a Patreon in the description that you can check out. I'm so grateful for all the folks that patronize this channel. It helps support my family and helps me keep making more videos for y'all. So I'll be back soon with another video. Enjoy the lovely summer weather in your garden. Thanks.